Mackie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In response to the member who's just taken his seat, I'm not sure very interesting and statutes amendment bill should actually go in the same sentence. But I'm pleased that that's what floats his boat. Statutes amendment bills are good to know. In fact, these really are bills that are used to fix botch-ups, really, where you get little mistakes and they're non-controversial. Everyone in Parliament supports them, and so we put them all together in a bill, an omnibus bill, to pass them through. But I'd say it's not surprising that we've had so many statutes amendment bills this term of government and in the previous term of government, given the complete disregard for due process that this government has. And a number of times on our feet when we've been discussing various pieces of legislation, Labor members of the House have pointed out that rushing a piece of legislation through the Parliament, rushing it through Select Committee, I think of the emissions trading scheme legislation that went through in 7 weeks through Select Committee, including the calling for and hearing of submissions, and then we're surprised that we have to pass so many statutes amendment bills fixing up all the mistakes which actually would have been picked up had the piece of legislation in question been allowed to have a proper process through Select Committee with a time frame that doesn't put the Select Committee under enormous pressure to return a piece of legislation before we've had due consideration, before submitters have had time to actually consider the legislation, put their thoughts down on paper, come before a Select Committee to discuss it. We've had pieces of legislation where we've set a deliberation date the following week before we've even seen a report, before we've even seen a revision track version of what the bill would look like. It's just, oh, we'll do that all next week. Well, that's not good process, and it's therefore no surprise that once again we're passing a statutes amendment bill to fix up all those errors which due process probably would have dealt with in the first place. The second reason it's not surprising we've had so many statutes amendment bills, and I notice that there are a number in the name of the Honourable Judith Collins, is because this is a particular minister who's under pressure. And this is a minister who tends not to read things. She tabled a report in the House on ACC in question time yesterday claiming that the decision to take away the payment of ACC entitlements to people who refused to sign a document allowing ACC to distribute their private details. Now, she claimed that was a decision by the Honourable Ruth Dyson. Now, it actually wasn't. She tabled a document saying that was a decision by the Honourable Ruth Dyson, Ruth Dyson had made that decision in 2006. Interestingly enough, what the document showed was actually exactly the opposite of that, which was that actually the Honourable Ruth Dyson said in no way at all should conditions be applied to the entitlements of ACC claimants, and if they choose not to sign that document, therefore, they should continue to receive their entitlements. So I'm not surprised at all that there are so many justice bills on this particular statutes amendment bill, because one, the Honourable Judith Collins, as I've just described in response to the questions by my colleague Ian Lees-Galloway, she doesn't read the documents that are put in front of her. She doesn't read the official information, because if she'd read the particular document that she tabled, she would have known that it actually said the opposite of what she was claiming it said, and that in fact it was a national government that allowed that to happen on their watch, and it was a Labor government under the Honourable Ruth Dyson as Minister of ACC who said actually there are not to be conditions attached to the payment of entitlements to ACC claimants. So she doesn't read documents. The second reason I'm not surprised that there are so many bills in the Statutes Amendment Bill under the name of the Honourable Judith Collins is she's under a lot of pressure at the moment. She's under an enormous amount of pressure due to a very real conflict of interest that was carried out in relation to her husband's company, Aurovida, and a ministerial visit that she did to China. So given the pressure that's come on her to come clean and be transparent around who exactly was invited to a meeting, what exactly was discussed, I'm not surprised that she's been making a number of mistakes. And I always apply Occam's razor principle in these situations, which is that the simplest solution is usually the right one, which is that they were in a room with a Chinese border official who's able to influence products going into China. Her husband's company had written to the Honourable Tim Grosser, the Honourable Nathan Guy, and said, please help us get our products into China. Anything you can do would help. She was sitting in a room with executives from, with members of the Chinese government, and we're expected to believe that they never ever discussed her husband's company. They never discussed Aurovida. Well, I think Occam's razor principle would tell us that that's highly unlikely, and that in fact the simplest solution is usually the correct one, which is that that's exactly what that meeting was for. It wasn't private. I have a great respect for public servants, Mr Speaker. I don't tend to invite them to my private dinners. Now, I don't know whether that's a failing on my part, but I don't tend to, and if other members have, I apologise. Particularly not public servants from other countries. So I'm not surprised that the Honourable Judith Collins has a number of bills in this particular Statutes Amendment Bill. We've got the Judicial Conduct Commissioner and Judicial Conduct Panel Act 2004, the Misuse of Drugs Amendment Act 1978, the Official Information Act 1982, the Ombudsman Act 1975, Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act 2012, the Sentencing Act 2002, and the Summary Proceedings Act.
That wasn't very long
2012
ago.
wasn't very long ago at all. The Sentencing Act 2002 and the Summary Proceedings Act 1957. That's a large number of bills to be on the order paper for one minister. But as I said, I'm not surprised. In response to answers about ACC today, she clearly doesn't read documents, well, actually, an even worse explanation would be she does read them, but she doesn't understand them. That would
or
be,
she just misled the House.
Or she just misled the House, as my colleague said. And the second reason why we've got so many bills being amended or being fixed up because of mistakes from the Honourable Judith Collins is because she is under enormous pressure at the moment to be transparent, to come clean with the New Zealand Parliament and the New Zealand people about what exactly went on during a taxpayer-funded ministerial visit. So I want to come to some of the other bills in the Statutes Amendment Bill. And first of all, the Antarctica Environmental Protection Act 1994, which is being amended. And the amendments that are being made are very good. But again, it's disappointing that when we dealt with the Sub-Antarctic Islands Marine Reserve Bill, that there were large tracts of that particular marine reserve which were withheld because the government ministers decided that in the future they might want to carry out some economic activity there that would be detrimental or opposed to the purposes of the Marine Reserves Act, and so they just left them out. So I'm really disappointed that we don't see and hear some protection for those parts of the Sub-Antarctic Islands that were left out deliberately of the piece of legislation that this Parliament passed and the Labour Party supported, because we support those marine reserves, but we would like to see proper protection and not just partial protection in areas where there's never going to be any economic activity, so it's easy low-hanging fruit, and proper actual protection in terms of marine reserves in this country and in the sub-Antarctic area. If I come to the next one, bill that's being amended that I'd like to comment on, the Marine Mammals Protection Act 1978. Now, wouldn't it be great if it was considered non-controversial to have in this part of the Statutes Amendment Bill proper protection for hectares and Maui dolphins?
That would be good.
Wouldn't it be fantastic if that was considered just such a no-brainer, which it should be. It should be. This is the most endangered dolphin species in the world. It should be a no-brainer that we put in place every single protection we can, because no government should sit by and watch a species go extinct on their watch when there was something they could do about it. So we've got amendments here to the Marine Mammals Protection Act, which is clarifying stuff around a warrant being issued to more than one officer. Wouldn't it be fantastic if this amendment to the Marine Mammals Act was introducing, non-controversially, proper protections for hectares and Maui dolphins? But of course, we're never going to see that under this government. What we're going to see are token gestures, what we're going to see are halfway measures which make it look like they're doing something, when in fact they are likely to preside over the extinction of a native species, despite the fact that there are things that they could have done about that they chose not to. I want to next come to Part 21, which is National Parks Act 1980. And again, wouldn't it be great if in this part we saw the removal of the rights of the Minister of Energy to have half the say about consents for mining or dock concessions on conservation land for mining that used to be the sole ambit of the Minister of Conservation and is now shared in a decision-making power between the Minister of Conservation and the Minister of Energy. Wouldn't it be wonderful if in Part 21 of the Statutes Amendment Bill, and I remember Kate Wilkinson's in the House, I remember when the announcement was made and there was Jerry Brownlee, the Minister of Energy, sitting next to Kate Wilkinson. Kate Wilkinson didn't say anything throughout the entire press conference as Jerry Brownlee was trying to convince us that this was an equal partnership, that they had equal say. This wasn't going to change anything. And the optics, as Stephen Joyce would say, really said it all. Kate Wilkinson sat there in the shadow of Jerry Brownlee saying absolutely nothing. Well, wouldn't it be great if in this Statutes Amendment Bill we saw in the National Parks Act 1980 the removal of the rights of the Minister of Energy to have half the decision-making power, or under a national government 100% of the decision-making power, to grant concessions on dockland for mining activity. And the removal of the economic benefit test that only applies to mining and doesn't apply to any other economic venture in the DOC estate, for example, tourism. Those are things that would have been nice to have seen in the Statutes Amendment Bill. Those are things that shouldn't be controversial in the Statutes Amendment Bill, but unfortunately under a national government they are.
I call Tim McIndoe.
Mr. Speaker, some of the